Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles, and welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and when we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we have another fun episode for you guys. You definitely want to stick around for this one. If you haven't liked the video or subscribed to the channel, make sure you go ahead and do so. So let me get into this topic here. Now, we were recently sent an article from one of our viewers on Instagram. His name is Eric Square. Eric Square does a great job sending us a lot of articles, and he's just one of our engaged members. So we appreciate you being, an engaged viewer of our channel. So he usually sends us articles, and he recently sent us one today, or was it yesterday, on Instagram. But before I get into the article, I want to read a little bit about this developing story because it really pertains to that, right? The article is centered on the Lakers possibly being interested in signing Mark Jackson, or hiring rather Mark Jackson to be their next head coach. So I got this article. You guys can hunt it down. You can get it all over the internet. But I'm going to be reading from CBSSports.com. So let me just get into it. This is the headline. Lakers coaching search. LeBron James would be very enthused about Mark Jackson getting the job, per report. It continues on. Before we get into who the Los Angeles Lakers might hire as their next coach, let's all agree that the way they let Frank Vogel go was classless. To let that news break before Vogel had even been informed of his fate in person was such a low move. Adrian Wojnarowski had that report out about 5 seconds after the final buzzer sounded on the Lakers season. He clearly appears to have had the news beforehand and was sitting on it. The formality of Vogel's firing is irrelevant. That was a total trash move by a front office that continues to use Frank Vogel as a fall guy for its own shortcomings. Now, having gotten that off my chest, let me move on to Rob Pelinka, who for some reason gets to keep pulling the levers for the Lakers when not one of those 29 teams in the NBA would have hired him in the same capacity. Might tap to replace Frank Vogel. Our Sam Quinn put together a list of 25 potential candidates. One of those candidates is Mark Jackson, who hasn't coached a game, since he was a coach of the Golden State Warriors back in 2014 when he was fired. The stink around Jackson's name took a long time to clear as details emerge regarding his controversial Warriors tenures. Truthfully, it still probably hasn't cleared. Still, according to Sam Amick of The Athletic, LeBron James would be very enthused by the prospect of Jackson landing the Lakers job. And then the article goes on to basically say that, LeBron James would be in support of it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You guys can go on there and read about it. It's out there. Now, based on this report, it seems as if LeBron, who is the captain of this team, would be open to having Mark Jackson as the head coach. And for good reason. He's the architect, as they said, of that. Well, he's the architect of the Golden State Warriors dynasty. And although he wasn't there to see his vision come to fruition, there's no secret about his impact on that team. And I think a lot of even some of the players that were part of that team when he was coaching them would attest to the impact that he had on the team. That being said, Mark Jackson is a no-nonsense type of guy. He is what you would call a guy's guy. Which brings me back to the concerns that our viewer, Eric Square, expressed in the comment. Essentially, these were his concerns. He said, right, to paraphrase, LeBron has never really had a coach that challenged him, with the exception of Ty Lue, right? And we all know that Ty Lue, the head coach of the Los Angeles Clippers, who's probably one of the best coaches probably the best coach in the NBA, has a no-nonsense type of policy. And we do remember, I remember it was a few years ago when he was a head coach. I think it was the first season when he was coaching the Cleveland Cavaliers after David Blatt was fired prematurely. I think there was one point when him and LeBron were having a spat on the sideline, and essentially Ty Lue looked over at him and he said, "Bro, shut the F up. Like, shut up. Enough. Like, zip it up, man. You talking too much." And that was the first time we saw a coach publicly scold LeBron James, and LeBron had to sit the hell down. He's a coach. What are you going to do? Walk up to the coach and start shouting at the coach? No, we're not going to have a Jimmy Butler moment here. I don't think LeBron would do something like that. So Ty Lue is one of those type of guys, and if Mark Jackson were to be a stern coach, the same way, let's say Ty Lue was, or to the way he normally is, the question is, would LeBron James eventually tune him out? This is what the viewer's number one concern is. And I think is a very, very good question that he poses, right? I think it's a very good question. Here's why. For the Lakers to be a better ball club next season, I think that they personally need a kick in the butt. Like, that's what I think. You don't need to baby this team. They need some They need someone that's a straight shooter to get them back on the right path. Why? Because last season, the reason that the Lakers failed was because they were an abysmal defensive team. And if Mark Jackson were to take control of this roster, start coaching them, he would have to get these guys to play some bloody defense and not spend the rest of the season blaming your coach. A coach that when he coached you to probably the number 1 or number 2 defensive rating, highest defensive rated team in the NBA the year you won the year you won the championship. A coach who was a defensive minded coach when he was with the Indiana during his tenure with the Indiana Pacers, right? It wasn't like all of a sudden Frank Vogel didn't know how to coach a team to play defense. These guys just simply refused to play defense, period, end of story. And that's the first thing that Mark Jackson will have to do if this Lakers team wants to be successful next season. I don't see a scenario in which Mark Jackson would sit by and let these guys pretty much get away with whatever the hell they wanted. I think I heard it various times. There were various times in the season where I think it was during coaching meetings or something like that, not coaching meeting, film sessions or something like that. Guys would be on their phone. That's unheard of. Like that is unheard of. I don't see a scenario in which Mark Jackson would be conducting a film session and somebody would be on their cell phone. I don't see something like that flying. And the Lakers players did all of this last season. So the question is, yeah, we want Mark Jackson to be our head coach. Oh, do you really though? Because you can ask for something, but the moment you get it, you may realize you didn't want that thing that you asked for in the first place. That's the first thing, right? Are we sure LeBron is going to be receptive to criticism at this point in his career? Now, let's talk about Russell Westbrook. We all know this has been documented ad nauseum by Skip Bayless, right? Who's from Oklahoma, all that. He basically said Russell Westbrook, from the moment he got into the NBA, he was babied. Right? He was babied. He was coddled. He was shunned. I mean, not shunned. He was, they shielded him from any critical, from any tough questions that reporters would want to ask him. He was kind of living in a capsule, in a bubble, right? Would Russell Westbrook, who has pretty much gotten whatever he wanted for his entire career, all of a sudden start listening to a coach who's telling him, Russell Westbrook, do this, or sit your butt down because you're throwing up bricks all over the court, and we're starting to build a road on the court with all these bricks you're dropping all over the place. Go sit down. Would Russell Westbrook start pouting? Would he be able to deal with someone like this? So yes, they may be very enthused to have him, but when he's around and he's trying to do his job, will they be as receptive as they are to him, to the idea of having him now, as to when he's actually going to be there on a daily basis and this team is not performing well and he's going to be getting into these guys? I think that is a good question. And the question is, why would these guys change all of a sudden? So it's a good question that our viewer, put forward. And I think it's a good one for the audience to answer. So the question is this to you guys. Do you think that Mark Jackson, number one, will be able to get through to this Lakers roster? Number one. Number two, do you think that they would be receptive to him and the Lakers organization would allow him to do his job? Or do you think they're going to be meddling in his affairs the way that they did with Frank Vogel? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. And we'll definitely catch you guys on the next episode. Peace.